So the importance of the ritual. Well, let me give you an example why a ritual matters, why having rituals matters. In the John Grinder, Tony Robbins idea of them, I think. Or I'm not sure whose idea. Where did we get these ideas? My idea. All right, an example, good example. What is this an example of? Remember that question I kept asking? What is this an example of? So the question here is, well, what is this thing you're watching? What are these YouTubes that I'm posting an example of? What are they about? In a larger chunk, we're going to chunk up a logical level. Have you been doing that a lot? You've been chunking up a lot and moving up a logical level and asking yourself frequently, every day, ritualistically, what is this an example of? Well, what these YouTubes that you're seeing here on NLP Connections and other places, and my fans around the world, the millions of them who are my adoring fans, what do they get from this at the process level? So that's one thing John will be very, very clear about, you stressing to yourself, what is this doing on the process level? What these YouTubes are, they are examples of rituals, a daily ritual. I have a daily ritual to produce one or more of these things for a purpose. And what I realize is that rituals are very much involved in refining and streamlining. So what I did at the very beginning when I didn't have an editing software, I hadn't learned it, this was very frustrating, this new camera, this new lens, how these things worked. In order to master them more and more, as I and you and everyone is mastering things more and more, the ritualistic approach is extremely useful because I can say, yes, I have sort of a mental commitment that every day I'm going to engage this process, and in that I have this deep curiosity, this burning curiosity to know, if I do this every day for a year or two and keep improving it, remember Tony's idea of Kaizen, continuous improvement, if I use my ritual in a Kaizen way, where am I performatively? How have I moved? And remember Tony's metaphor of the club face hitting the ball in his video? He's talking about rituals, you know, and what is that 1 degree of difference? So if I make that one every day, I'm making 1 degree of difference. In 300 days, I've made 300 degrees of difference. And that's why I recommend that everybody have some kind of disciplining ritual, some kind of ritual that's a bounded system, such as this, with sort of a bounded set of rules. You've got to sit in a certain place and talk about certain things, and I have to bring my thoughts together. Every day I have to sit around and think, where are my thoughts going to be today? What am I going to be talking about? How am I going to present this thing? And that is a very focusing, directing process of both this, learning about myself, discovering how I am in this frame, what I have to share, what of the value can I add, how do I organize my thoughts, and what pre-rituals. So if you even go back into a nice deep trance back there somewhere, ask yourself, what rituals do you use to prepare for your ritual? So there's not just one ritual, there's a nested set of rituals. Rituals that get you ready for rituals. Rituals where you're sitting around in the morning having your coffee or whatever is sort of bringing you into focus for the day and thinking, what in the world am I going to talk about? What do I have to offer here? How do I put this together mentally? How do I string together a 5 to 7 minute little chain of thoughts and ideas and entailments and beliefs and messages and that might be received? So think about this. This will be my concluding bit for this day, is how does this ritualistic behavior and ritualistic act that I'm engaged in give me an advantage? How does this help me every day by doing this and ritualizing this and focusing on this and asking what is this an example of? How does that take me to a place that I couldn't get to otherwise, or it would be unlikely because I didn't have that repetitive, constant, small but meaningful investment of time in a learning process, in a self-discovery process, in a mastery process, a subtle mastery process. Now, let me suggest that if everybody out there, all of you people watching this and the number of people that are involved with this, we're doing the same thing. If you were committing yourself and focusing yourself to every day to making a video, if you were doing the same process that I was doing right now and producing something and hosting it up there on YouTube at no cost with some little simple digital camera, and you really compelled yourself to have to do this and come up with something to say and put it all together and do it, where would you be in a year if you engaged that ritual? And you could use many other types of rituals. I'm just using this as an example of, remember the chunking down? What is an example of this? So if we're going to chunk down, this is an example of how I might engage a ritual. You might chunk down to another specific of how, or another finer grained thing of how you will go about a ritual. But ask yourself deeply, on multiple levels, perhaps even in your dreams, how do you generate rituals? How do you use them? And how will those rituals inevitably transform you, as they inevitably will? Because I will add as one little afterthought, a lot of life, I've discovered in a lot of people, is ritualistic. It's just not generative ritual. So consider that distinction. I want you to make that distinction very clearly in your mind between simply static, inertial, compulsive rituals and creative, discovering, challenging, boundary-pushing, generative rituals. So how are you moving? Ask yourself that question. Ask your unconscious that question at multiple levels of trance. How are you moving from static, stasis, rituals of non-change and rituals of maintaining the status quo to rituals of moving beyond your self-imposed status quos? Now that's a really good use of questions, don't you think?